Hey guys, Zane here with another One Take review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Cheekface album, Too Much to Ask. Too Much to Ask is the latest studio album from quirky indie rock oddball darlings, Cheekface. After the very strong and remarkably consistent Emphatically No released last year and really just promised a lot of excellence from the trio, Cheekface used their third full-length studio album to demonstrate themselves filling their own shoes basically and creating something that truly stands out in the world of indie music at the moment. Much of the band's charm relies on something that may initially be perceived, especially by newer listeners, as novelty to some extent. After all, Cheekface's preppy instrumentals and songwriting that could give Lewis Carroll a run for his money in terms of surreal engagement can be equally off-putting for new listeners to the group. However, there is something significantly more self-aware and self-enduring on Too Much to Ask that really doesn't seem all that obvious when you first look at it, but really this is something that manages to hold its own and not just be another quirky for the sake of being weird kind of record. Despite the record's bouncy and often somewhat humorous nature, the band perform with such grace that I really don't think there's anyone that can match Cheekface's level of clever, oddball self-awareness overall. Amanda Tannen's bass work is consistently groovy and never once falls out of place, and you couldn't really ask for more of a consistent and practiced drummer than Mark Edwards. Frontman Greg Katz's guitar work also happens to walk a very thin and somewhat cartoonish line between punk and pop rock, not too dissimilar from bands like Gang of Four and the Minutemen that came before the Cheekface name ever properly existed. And this is something that ultimately creates a bit of a dance punk influenced sound and aesthetic on Too Much to Ask, something that has been slightly apparent on previous releases by Cheekface, but never quite as much so than on their latest effort. And I think this is great because it allows them to evolve artistically while never distancing themselves too much from the roots that made them such an endearing band in the first place, and the band that attracted so many people that are into just mildly out there alternative music. In fact, that aforementioned dance punk influence and sound is what makes Too Much to Ask Cheekface's most engaging effort to date. Dance punk has been an undeniably relevant sound, especially within critical circles of music, especially with artists like Parquet Courts and more recently the Viagra Boys, all really just throwing their hat into this ring of dance punk sounds, and to varying degrees of success. For example, those two previously mentioned artists, very successful, they both do excellent music, but there are some examples that I shall not name that have done less than stellar work, to be totally honest. Like any subculture or movement within music, the current dance punk revival is sort of 50-50, and the great stuff will be remembered in the future, and the less than great stuff will be completely forgotten with time, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on the way that you look at it. And while Cheekface may not be totally remembered solely due to the fact that they have this sort of cult band status, I really do think that their take on the sound is one of the better takes out there, not within the mainstream. Paired with Cheekface's signature brand of humor, this sound really does work out great, as does the aesthetic and sonic aesthetic specifically that goes along with it, and it's great hearing a song like I Feel So Weird as it combines the strangeness and charm of Cheekface as a band with this direct and attitude-filled style that comes with punk music, and it really does ultimately create something that I think is one of the most standout listening experiences that Cheekface have delivered so far. If anything, this all just goes to show how hell-bent Cheekface have been on becoming a better and better project with each passing release. They've just done nothing but improve over the course of the past several years, and this is their best effort so far, but if they continue in this trajectory, I could easily see them topping even Too Much to Ask with their next release. And Cheekface have always been sort of a light and more accessible version of a musical equivalent of Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job, at least sort of. So this sort of quirky, out there, left field kind of sound, this sonic aesthetic, and this overall type of music perfectly pairs with their humor and their lyrical style. The off-kilter style of dance punk just really does suit Cheekface and everything that they are all about conceptually. Speaking of which, the band's humor is just as effective as it's ever been on Too Much to Ask. In fact, that's always been one of their stronger points as a project. Nothing new is really done here in regards to the humor in comparison to Cheekface's past record, so anyone who is left polarized or even turned off by the humor that was delivered in albums like Emphatically No will likely remain the same throughout the Too Much to Ask listening experience, but I still do think that they have continued to improve on this to some extent, even though they are kind of repeating the same comedic style and timing. Plus, an album with song titles like Vegan Water and You Always Want to Bomb the Middle East should hopefully make the kind of comedic style that is being presented on Too Much to Ask apparent to anybody before they even listen to it, so. While a band sticking to a lyrical style that can easily grow stale over the course of one album, let alone three, is something that can definitely be worrying, especially for a band that are musically very impressive but can be dragged down by weak songwriting, Cheekface managed to keep things extremely engaging and never really fall flat in terms of delivery or lyrical style. If anything, in the current indie landscape, Cheekface have the most unusual sort of flair out there right now. It's not traditional by any means, and they aren't really going to blow anyone away immediately, but that's kind of the greatness about them. It's all these different puzzle pieces falling into place perfectly rather than this one giant sucker punch to the face, and that's just the appeal of Cheekface, I suppose. There's enough comedic variety and also, more importantly, self-restraint on Too Much to Ask that ensures that they never go into the realm of total pointlessness outside of the semi-transitional filler track Noodles, which that doesn't even crack a minute and it's the same line repeated over and over, so I don't even know if I can really count that as a proper song, but still, it's on the record, so it kind of unfortunately does. And overall, I do genuinely think that they can be pretty intelligent at times as well. I mean, sure, songs like Pledge Drive have some pretty odd lyrics, but they have some pretty self-aware and even powerful lyricism at times that really just goes to show how underestimated and underappreciated Cheekface are at the moment. So overall, Too Much to Ask is by far the best Cheekface album thus far. While they definitely aren't all that close to getting any major awards or accolades or anything like that, unfortunately, it isn't hard to see why this three-piece has been getting such a loyal fan base and genuine traction within the world of indie music. I'm going to give this album 4 stars out of 5. My one take on this album is that Too Much to Ask is a beautifully executed slice of surrealist humor and dance punk adjacent sounds, made all the more exciting by the fact that Cheekface are doing nothing but getting better and better with every single record. So again, 4 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.